Kanthapura, Chapter 4. The day dawned over the ghats, the day rose over the blue mountain, and churning through the grey, wrapped valleys, swirled up and swam across the whole air. The day rose into the air, and with it rose the dust of the morning. And the carts began to creak round the bulging rocks and the coppery peaks, and the sun fell into the river and pierced it to the pebbles, while the carts rolled on and on, fair carts of the Kanthapur, fair carts that came from Madur and Tipur and Santur and Kupur, with chilies and coconut, rice and ragi, cloth, tamarind, butter and oil, bangles and kumkum, little pictures of Rama and Krishna, and Shankar and the Mahatma, little dolls for the youngest, little kites for the elder, and little chess pieces for the old carts rolled by the Sempurnol and down into the valley of the Tipur stream, then rose again and groaned round the Kanchamma hill and going straight into the temple grove. One by one, with lolling bells and muffled bells with horn protectors in copper and back protectors in lace, they all stood there in one moment of fitful peace. Salutations to thee, Kanchamma, Goddess Supreme. And then the yokes began to shake, and the bulls began to shiver and move. And when the yokes touched the earth, men came out one by one, travellers that had paid a 4 anna bit or an 8 anna bit to sleep upon pungent tamarind and suffocating chilies. Travellers who would take the Papur carts to go to the Papur mountains, the Sempur carts to go to the Sempur mountains, and some too that would tramp down the passes into the villages by the sea, or hurry on to Kanthapur as our Murthy did this summer morning. Murthy with a bundle of khadi on his back and a bundle of books in his arms. He skirted the temple flower garden and hurrying around Borana's toddy booth and crossing the highway, he rushed up the village road to the Panchayat mound, turned to the left, followed Bhatta's devil's field where Praya Tippa was weeding, jumped across Sithamma's stile and went straight through the backyard. Maybe Ratan would be at the well, he thought. But Ratan was not there, and the rope hung over the pulley, solemn and covered with flies. So he ran over the temple promontory and straight across the Brahman street corner to Rangamma's house. But seeing that Rangamma had not yet returned from the river, he threw the bundles into the congress room and walked back to see his mother, who sat by the threshold, her bundle of dirty clothes beside her, herself unwashed and morose. "Oh, mother, you are here to give warm coffee to your son," cried Murthy as he went over the steps and moved forward to fall at her feet. But she pushed him away and told him he should never show himself again, not until he had sought prayashchit from the Swami himself. Oh, to have a son excommunicated! Oh, to have gone to Banaras and Rameshwaram and to Gaya and to Gokarna and to have a son excommunicated! I wish I had closed my eyes with your father instead of leaving to see you polluted. Polluted, go away, you pariah! But what is all this about, mother? What? Don't talk like an innocent. Go and stand on the steps like a pariah. Let not your shadow fall on me. Enough of it. But why, mother? Why? Go and ask the squirrel on the fence. I don't know. Go away and don't you ever show your face to me again till you have been purified by the Swami. And she rose up and rushed down the steps, running through the Brahman street and the Potter street, and when she was by the aloe lane, she grew so violent with Pariah Bedaya because he would not stand aside to let her pass by, that she spat on him and shouted at him and said it was all her son's fault, that he had brought shame on her family and on the community and on the village. And she decided there and then that she would go to Banaras and die there a holy death, lest the evil follow her. But when she came to the river, they were all so occupied with their washing that she too began to bang her clothes on the stones, and in banging she grew calmer. And when she had taken her bath and came back home telling her beads, she felt the sands and the grass and the shadows so familiar that she went straight to the kitchen and began to cook as usual. But where was Murthy? He would come. He was only at Rangamma's house. Oh, he was no wicked child to leave the village without telling her. Oh, the fool she was to have been so angry with him. Age brings anger, it is just a passing rage. And she sat herself down to meditate, but the Gayatri muttered itself out soft and fast. And now and again, when she opened her eyes and looked towards the main entrance through the kitchen door, her eyes fell on the royal sacred flame, and the breathful flowers and the gourds and the walls looked angry and empty. Yes, Murthy would come, and when the prayer was said and the rice water was on the hearth, she walked up to the veranda to see if he was on Rangamma's veranda, but he was not. And as Sinu was passing by the door, she asked him if he went by Rangamma's house to tell Murthy that the coffee was ready. Poor boy, he must be so hungry after a night in the cart. And she went in crying, Rama Rama, and a tear ran down her cheeks. Then there were footsteps at the door, and they were heavy and odd, and they were not Murthy's but Bhatta's. And Bhatt told her that Murthy had been very angry with him for having said the Swami was going to excommunicate him. That it was not true, that the Swami had only said he would excommunicate Murthy if he continued with this pariah business. And Murthy says, let the Swami do what he likes. I will go and do more and more pariah work. I will go and eat with them if necessary. Why not? Are they not men like us? And the Swami, who is he? A self-chosen fool. He may be learned in the Vedas and all that, but he has no heart. He has no thinking power. And what shall I say to that, Narsamma? He says that learned Bhattare. Yes, that is what he just told me. I was passing by Rangamma's house after a peep into the temple, and Rangamma says, Murthy is here and he wants to see you, Bhattare. And I go and I see Murthy angry and disrespectful. Oh, these unholy days, Narsamma, I pity you. Is there nothing that can be done now? Bhattare asks Narsamma, her voice trembling. Nothing, Narsamma. If he goes on at this rate, I will have to tell the Swami about it. I do not want our community polluted and the manes of our ancestors insatiate. Never, Narsamma, never. But he is so reasonable, Bhattare. I cannot imagine our Murthy saying these things, Rama Rama. Poor Narsamma. You have never been to the city. You cannot even imagine the pollutions that go on there. It was not for nothing that Murthy went to a university. Well, one has to close one's eyes and ears, or else the food will not go down one's throat these days. Then Murthy comes in and Narsamma begins to weep and Bhatt grows silent. And when Murthy has gone to wash his feet in the bathroom, Bhatt goes away, leaving Narsamma shaking with sobs. Murthy does not go to her, says not even a kind word. Then Narsamma rises, wipes her face and goes into the kitchen, and when the food is cooked, she lays a leaf in the main hall and does not even put a glass of water for the libations. And she goes to the veranda where Murthy is reading and says, the leaf is laid. I am coming. And Murthy sits by the kitchen threshold and eats like a servant. in mouthfuls, slowly and without a word. And when he has eaten his meal, he goes and washes himself at the well, and Narsamma munches her food alone in the kitchen, while tears run down her cheeks. Oh, this Gandhi, would he were destroyed! From that day on, they never spoke to each other, Narsamma and Murthy. He sat and ate his food by the kitchen threshold, and she in the kitchen. And everybody saw that Narsamma was growing thin as a bamboo and shriveled like banana bark. But Murthy went more and more into the Praya quarters, and now he was seen walking side by side with them. And then one day, when Bidal Timayya's son Putayya lost his wife, he even carried the body for a while. And when everybody saw him doing this openly, for it was on the river path, mind you, they all cried, "Oh, he's lost!" And Bhatt ran down to the city that very morning and came back 2 days later with the word of the Swami that Murthy was excommunicated, he, his family, and all the generations to come. What? Never to go to the temple or to an obscure dinner? Never to a marriage party or a hair cutting ceremony? Oh, moaned Narsamma. And that very night, when the doors were closed and the voices had died away, she ran through the Brahmin street and the Potter street, and standing at the village gate, she spat once towards the east and once towards the west, once towards the south and once towards the north, and then spitting again thrice at the Praya huts. Where the dogs began to raise a howl, she ran over the fig tree field Band, and she had such a shiver at the thought of all the ghosts and the spirits and the evil ones of flame that she trembled and coughed. But there was something deep and desperate that hurried her on, and she passed by Rangamma's sugarcane field and by the mango grove to the river, just where the whirlpool gropes and gurgles, and she looked up at the moonlit sky. And the winds of the night and the shadows of the night and the jackals of the night so pierced her breast that she shuddered and sank unconscious upon the sands. And the cold so pierced her that the next morning she was dead. They burnt her where she lay, and when the ashes were thrown into the river, Rangamma turned to Bhatt and says, "He is alone. The obsequial ceremonies will be held in our house." "What obsequies?" "Why, Narsamma's." "But who will officiate?" "You." "You can offer me a king's daughter, but never will I sell my soul to a pariah." But Murthy left us that very night, and some said he went to Shri Rangpatnam, and some said to the Tungabhadra, and some said he went over to his brother-in-law of Harihar, and there they did it all. But nobody thinks of it now, and nobody talks of it, and when Murthy came back, he lived on in Rangamma's house. They gave him food by the kitchen door as Narsamma did, and he still went to the prayas, and he still gave them cotton to spin and yarn to weave, and he taught them alphabets and grammar and arithmetic and Hindi. And now my Sinu too was going to go with him, and when Sinu would begin to teach them, Murthy would go up to the Skeffington coffee estate, for there too were prayas, and they too wanted to read and to write. Murthy would go there tomorrow. Thank you.